Welcome back to our second episode of Talking XP's Fantasy Book Club. Today we read Garth Nix's Sabriel, which
debatable.
We'll discuss the pronunciation here in a minute. Before we go that far, I am Daniel. I'll probably be, the host, I suppose. And we've also got Johnny.
Hi.
We've got Ryan.
Hello.
We've got Zach.
Hello.
And we've got special guest Sabrina.
Hello.
So this month's selection, we don't do these monthly, but this selection was done by Zach.
This episode's
pick.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Zach, if you have anything you kind of want to start off with.
Let me.
Maybe we can all give our just some kind of thoughts about the book, and then we can do a brief synopsis, and then we can kind of run from there.
Well, let me talk about like why I brought this book in the first place and sort of my history with it. We actually, way back in yonder year of 2016, we played a D&D campaign, and our special guest Sabrina was playing a character named Sabriel, and that always just kind of stuck in the back of my mind. I never talked to her about it. I didn't know the history of it at all. And then one day I'm walking through the shelves of a bookstore, and I saw Sabriel on a shelf, and I thought, that looks cool, that sounds cool, and I know, like, that's at least funny that it's the same name as a D&D character, so I picked it up, really enjoyed it. I think it's a fun, like, sort of, not really light fantasy, but it's an easy read, good, quick story, it's got some cool ideas. I really enjoyed it. What did you guys think?
I thought
Johnny.
it was a lot of fun. It was way shorter of a read than our first fantasy book club, and so that has to be said.
That is the reason. That's one of the main reasons I put this right up against our last pick, which was The Stand. That book's 1,400 pages. This one's like maybe 300.
370.
3 something.
Mine was 311.
I thought, let's give them a nice, quick, like short, bite-sized book.
And this is the second book that I have read start to finish ever. So starting with The Stand and my ending with
it's gonna be a
Sabriel,
real,
well, not ending, but my second book being Sabriel. This one was far more enjoyable, a lot less dense than Stephen King.
We're gonna get.
I like the fantasy like more so like the fantasy that everybody like the Tolkien type of fantasy.
Yeah,
a little bit different, but
you like that genre
in a lot of ways. But like that
high
kind of
fantasy.
genre of fantasy, high fantasy. If we're talking about like overall just feelings, I thought that it was good. Yeah. Wasn't like amazing, but it was good.
I'd actually agree. I have some I don't think it's perfect. I have a couple issues with it, but overall, I enjoy the ride.
Ryan. Sorry.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I was listening to it on Audible, and I was listening to it at like 1.6 speed to
the
2
optimal way to enjoy a book.
So there's bits and pieces that I've missed on different sections of it. It was fine. I mean, I feel like it was predictable from the first prologue, like 100%. Like I did read the prologue myself, and then I read the first chapter, and then I moved on to Audible within this last week. And then from like I said, from the moment I read the prologue, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I mean, I'm okay, I think, talking about spoilers at this point.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a full spoiler.
So we'll delve into it.
If you don't want to hear it, end it.
We'll delve into
This
it.
is not the podcast for you.
We'll delve into it further on as this talk develops. But from the moment I first read that first interaction between Sabriel's father and Karagor, just go, oh man, I wonder who the big bad guy is gonna be. Boy, I bet Abhorsen's gonna die, and she's gonna have to do something. I knew that from the prologue. That was clear, which is fine.
Okay,
that's not a problem necessarily.
It's not trying to hide it.
No,
right? It's pretty clear. Like it's not meant to be a twist. Any of those things.
Right.
That's exactly
about the journey. We'll get into that in a minute.
That's what I say. Daniel said the same exact thing about The Stand. It's like I don't care. It's like I mean, that being said, I like this way more than The Stand 100%.
That's good. What all I'm saying is like, yeah, it's predictable that he's the villain and he's gonna die, but like the book's not trying to trick you into thinking those are the main characters.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Anyway,
No,
I get you.
Sabrina, you have a long history with this. This is
Yes.
I know
this
you're
is
a
why
big
we
fan
wanted
of this
you to be a
book.
part of this.
Yeah, we brought you on because you love this book so much.
Yeah, so I'm biased because this is my favorite book, and I love it, and I love the whole series. I read this back in middle school, and I'm not going to try to figure out what date that was because I'm bad at math. But the reason I read it is because my name is Sabrina. One of my nicknames is Sabriel, and I saw it on the book, and I was like, that has the first 5 letters of my name. It has to be good, and it was.
And it was.
But I will admit that rereading it for who knows how many times, because I reread this in the last 3 days, and I finished it a couple hours ago. I already knew it. I just wanted to refresh. There were more things that I was reading about it, having now read it more recently. It was like, oh, that maybe isn't done the best way, or maybe that's not quite as good or as golden as I thought it was. I still love it. And yeah, so I will argue.
Sure.
Perfect. So
Daniel,
I think
how did you feel?
I mean, I thought it was a good book. I enjoyed my time with it. There are some, like you mentioned, Zach, there's some good ideas in it, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, that I enjoyed. I think that the same things that I liked about it are the same sort of things that constrained it for me and limited it for me to only being a good book, and one that I don't particularly feel an interest in pursuing the sequels, but I'm not disappointed that I read it.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm curious to hear what those are.
So for a little bit of background, first of all, because I did a little bit of research, I went to Wikipedia and I looked up some facts about this book. It won a couple of awards the year it came out, which was 1995, for young adult fiction.
Oh, wow.
Garth Nix is a fairly prolific writer. I haven't read any of the other.
I haven't read much of his stuff, but I know he's got a pretty big backlog.
Yeah, he's done. He's been a pretty successful writer. And then, of course, there were 3 sequels, with one coming out, I think, or maybe it was, there are a bunch of books that have come out in the series, and I think the most recent one that came out was actually a prequel, and it came out a couple of years ago. But it's still something that it's maintained the test of time. It's been very popular since its release. And the general premise of the book is we have our protagonist, Sabriel, which I say Sabriel because I'm thinking Gabriel with an S in front.
Which makes sense.
Right. And meanwhile, we say Sabriel because we're thinking Sabrina with an EL at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes these both make sense.
Yeah, it's potato, whatever you're more comfortable with.
And the author even said it doesn't matter.
We had a big argument about this right when we recommended the book. We had to go look into it. But I think we can settle on say whatever
you picked, it is what it is.
So the general premise is that our protagonist, Sabriel, is the daughter of this guy who we call Abhorsen. That's the only name we get for him over the course of the book. She is sort of sent by him to Ancelstier, which is a kingdom in the southern part of the continent on which this story takes place, where she went to school, and at the age of 18, as she is set to depart her education, she gets a message from her father that is full of mystery, and she has to basically go track him down. She has to journey into the Old Kingdom, which is sort of the northern half of this continent, where the southern half is more kind of modern, what we would think of as kind of 20th century. And in the northern part of the country, it's more sort of stereotypical high fantasy, kingdom, magic, the southern part's technology, and she has to cross over to this Old Kingdom where she is from but hasn't been in 13 years, and she has to locate her father and see if she can stop the evil that he was pursuing when he ended up getting waylaid. And that's sort of the general premise, and I'm sure we'll dive into more specifics from there. Zach?
Well, I do want to kind of elaborate on the premise. So, like, he's called Abhorsen, but that's a title that one inherits, and it's a sort of reverse necromancer. Like, the whole book is based around necromancy and magic, but the idea is that the Abhorsen is like a good necromancer that puts undead down, and like sends them back into the undead, and as he dies, the title falls down onto Sabriel, who has to like learn to become the Aberson and like do her necromancy magic and all that sort of stuff. And that's like the conceit of the book.
I believe Sabrina had something to say in regards to, I think, the sequels a little bit ago.
What do you mean?
Sure. I haven't read the sequels. I'm curious about them.
No, because when Daniel was going over the Wikipedia article about the sequels, you had something you were going to say.
I was just going to spout knowledge of how many books are in there and where they are. Because
how many books are there, Sabrina?
I'm curious how many
Tell
books
us.
there are.
This is what we're here for.
Why can't I find any of them in any bookstores?
I don't know that because, the first 3 were released as originally released as a trilogy called the Old Kingdom Trilogy. It is now the Old Kingdom series because I'm pretty sure the 6th book is coming out this November.
Oh, wow.
So I think
So you got plenty of time to catch up.
Yes.
Okay,
It is the 25th anniversary of the release of Sabriel in at least, I believe, the U.S. I think it was released 1996 is released to U.S. It was released 1995 in Australia, so it is technically the 26th anniversary from the original release. But there are 25th anniversary editions of Sabriel out there somewhere. I've only been seeing them through Garth Nix Twitter. I've definitely pre-ordered one of them, and then the 6th book in the series comes out in November, which I've also pre-ordered, but,
Cool.
That's it.
I'm curious to read them at some point. I do want to get through the rest of the series.
They're still, obviously along the same thing, but it's not too much about.
It's sort of like generational, from what I understand.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know how much you guys want me to share about the continued books. If that ruins
probably
anything.
keep it to Sabriel.
Yeah. So
that way our listeners can get that other stuff.
Suffice to say, I'm curious, and I'll read them at some point in my life.
They're good. They're very good.
That's good.
Ryan, did you have some thoughts you wanted to throw in the ring?
No, that was just, I was trying
Okay.
to just get it to Sabrina.
So do we want to talk about what we liked or what we didn't like?
That's
first?
kind of where I was going to go. And I think that the first place we kind of have to start off here, and something that we did with the last book that we talked about, was kind of the genre, right, of the piece. Because with the last book we were kind of talking about, is it science fiction, is it fantasy, what makes fantasy? I think with this book, it's a lot easier in that it's definitely high fantasy.
Pretty clearly
You flip to the first page, you've got the map of the world right there.
Yep.
So like you get all the
Always
things
gotta
that you would
have one.
expect out of a fantasy novel. It's also, and I don't think anyone really argue with this, definitely YA fiction. And I don't mean to say that this is a book for children. It's just that young adult novels have a lot of like tropes and things that are consistent as a genre. And there are a lot of really good young adult novels that are good no matter how old you are and how long ago they came out. I would also qualify things like Harry Potter as a young adult novel, right? So that's I'm not trying to say anything negative about it. I just think that's an accurate way to describe the book.
Yeah, like it's what's the word? It's accessible to younger people, but it's still you can still appreciate it as an adult.
And that's not even I'm talking purely just from kind of like a story standpoint, the way it's contrived. We've got a young protagonist, sort of a hero's journey where she's coming from a world that she's familiar with and going to one that she's not, and she kind of has this journey of self-exploration.
Right.
There's a lot of young adult fantasy that does that, and
There's
then
this
it's kind of figuring out
interest.
figuring out what makes it different, right? And so the first thing that I want to applaud this book for is that I really like the necromancy thing. That's this book's twist on young adult fiction. Is their focus specifically not just on magic in general, but on the idea that this is a world where there's a space, a physical space that exists between life and death, and this is a place that certain people can go, and that they have tools at their disposal that they can use to enslave or put to sleep these dead beings. And then there are a bunch of dead beings, and they have different classifications and different powers and different things they can do. The fact that the necromancy is channeled through this idea of these bells that Sabriel carries is super cool and super unique. You don't see a lot of magic that's channeled through sound, and also kind of this idea of like emotion and tonality. So that was super cool. That whole everything about that, the system of the gates and everything, the way they describe this sort of limbo between life and death was really cool.
It's really like
the best
you really
part of
get
this
a good
book for me.
image of what he's talking about when he like describes
100%.
the river and the different waterfalls and everything, the different layers.
This is the best part of this book to me.
Completely, I agree. And I wanted to drill down on the necromancy bit. I think it's not only is it cool that it focuses on necromancy, it's a really interesting take on it with like he goes down on the like visual of the bells. I think is so cool. And like it's a unique tool for casting magic, and like how they all do different things, and like
which is what I only think of for D&D now. D&D 5e, they came out with Toll the Dead, and like now that I have read this book, I'm like, oh my god, this is totally where it's from.
For sure,
this is totally where
it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, there are a lot of things older than the stories that we're talking about with the symbology of bells and the dead and all that kind of stuff. But yes, it's pulling on some really great strings there from a lot of origins.
Sabrina mentioned a bard, and now I want to play a necromantic bard because that's something
with the bell.
Fun.
That's a fucking
that would
cool
be super
idea.
cool.
But regardless, something that I was thinking of towards the end, which I mean, part of it was there's a couple different reasons why I felt this way about the ending. I mean, I'm sure at least 30% of it's because I was listening to it at fast paced. I think at this point, the last epilogue part, I was listening to it at like 1.6 speed, so it wasn't that bad. It's actually very understandable. But the cool thing is the audiobook is is read by Tim Curry.
Whoa.
What?
That's wild.
Yeah.
Weird.
Okay.
So
Random.
He really acted his heart out for Sabriel's final moments. Like, I'm dead. It's like, oh my god, shut up. Like, for fuck's sakes. Like, because not that it's not written bad by any means. It's just like it's very over the top. At least with how his performance of it was too, which is fine. But then she's talking to all of her past selves, which I just was thinking of the Avatar at that point. And so I was looking at Sabrina because she's right next to me as I'm listening to it. And says, this is just the Avatar state. Like, it's like, no, you have to go back. You are the chosen one. And she's like, okay, whatever. But
I mean, yeah, again, that's absolutely a trope. Again, barred from all kinds of things.
100%.
Yeah. And also like 10 years before the Avatar. Like,
I mean, I'm not saying, yeah, obviously it's not based on that at all. But I'm just saying that was what I was thinking of.
They just stole it from the
I'm pretty sure
Avatar.
I thought the same thing.
You know, there was a guy by the name of Jesus Christ who was brought back from the dead one time. So I think he definitely might lay claim to one of those, an early... yeah,
he's going to copyright all those tropes.
Yeah.
But see, my only thing hearing just the last few chapters from his audiobook is that granted, you know, everyone reads it differently. Right. So I feel like it almost, because I didn't read any of that last epilogue the way that he was reading it, which I did hate. I hated the way he said it. I also hated Carragher's voice. That was a choice.
Yeah,
it was a bad one.
He had some interesting choices. I mean, he did a good performance, but it did it differently than I think I would have read it myself as well.
Yeah, because depending, having it read to you, obviously it changes how you see how the scene plays out, and obviously how you see Sabriel. Because I had imagined her saying that in a completely different manner to how he was taking it, but obviously it's interpretation.
Yeah. I mean, also, like I said, it doesn't, like, 30% of it, too, is that I was listening to it at 1.6 speed.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
But, like, also at 1.6 speed, it's not that much faster.
No, because he reads really slow, too. I watch most of my YouTube videos at 1/2 speed.
You're one of those crazy.
Guys are monsters.
Well, it's because they talk too slow. I just needed to be a little bit faster for me to keep up.
I get it. Johnny, did you have a favorite moment or something you wanted to mention?
Favorite moment
or favorite thing.
No, but that's a good question. Well, one thing that I wanted to mention was that each bell does something different, and it was overwhelming to know all of it, and it was kind of like, Lord dump, this is all of the bells, and obviously it was going to come in later.
Well, and each bell is only used once. Really.
Right.
Some are used more than once, and some aren't used at all.
But I feel like it is a lot all at once in that chapter. I was kind of just letting it wash past and just 100%. They're like, damn, these are cool. I'm not gonna remember what these do, but I feel like he does a pretty good job of when she actually uses the bell, he reminds you what each one does.
Yeah, 100%. And I didn't even try to understand what any of them did when he first described him. I just read through it and I was like, cool. Because anybody with a little bit of a sense in storytelling could know that, yes, this is a lore dump, but yes, it's going to come up later.
It's going to be
a foreshadowing. You know, it's like, hey, these are what they do. You're going to see them later. I just wanted to show you that I have a plan for all of these, and this is what they do. Yeah. I thought that was really cool. Some of them worked in a different way than I expected them to work, though. Like, the one that just kills people, it seemed like it just didn't in some cases. Which was like, because like they said that it kills people. And then they went to...
It just kind of kills everything that can hear it.
Right, but then what's-his-face didn't die somehow. I can't remember exactly how it was, but the love interest, and then I don't know if
because she kissed him.
Because
it was a romantic
Right, that was
thing.
what it was. That's what it was.
Their love is the greatest magic, Johnny.
Of course. Yeah, it's even more powerful than necromantic bells
some
that
thoughts on
kill
Touchstone
people.
Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there.
I was gonna say
let's keep the positives for now.
For sure.
We'll get there. I swear to God, we'll get there really soon with the negatives. I just wanted us to say all the nice things before we.
Oh, well, yeah.
I won't, like, we touched on it. I think it's sick. Like, I love the idea of the split map and, the two sides of, like, what an interesting idea.
I wish it'd been explored more.
World. Yeah. It just, like, on one side of a wall, magic works, and on the other side, it doesn't, and they've advanced 100 years or whatever. I love that concept. It's just really cool ideas that he's played around with,
I liked Mogget. I thought
Mogget
he was
cool.
A really cool character.
Mogget's very good.
I was because like I said, I listened to the first half of the book at normal speed, but then as I was running out of time, I had to step up like the 1.6 speed. So that's one of the reasons I was listening it faster.
It was an act of desperation. We understand.
Oh god.
But overall, like a lot of it was going in one ear and out the other for a lot of the lore stuff because there was so much stuff. And that's gonna be part of my negative stuff, and I'll talk about that later. But I did like Mogget. I am a little bit confused because, like I said, I was listening to the ending pretty fast. What happened to Mogget? I know that Mogget went with her dad. They disappeared. He came back with some of the stuff, and then I think he died. I think if I'm remembering correctly. But
not
quite.
Not exactly, but close. No.
That's how you there.
Because there were the two cats, right? There were the two cats at the end, and presumably he's the white cat. And
which I get.
And Caragor becomes the black cat.
So I understood that
part. I do not
part.
remember any of this.
But
last chapter.
Maybe we should go over the ending real quick.
Yeah, because the ending
Sabrina,
confused
you
me
want to take us through the ending real fast?
Where do you want me to start?
Okay.
After the battle.
Start,
They kill at the schoolhouse.
After the Caragor thing. Okay, so I mean, they have the sarcophagus that has the body of the big bad evil guy who can't die because he has a real form that's still there. But they running against the clock. He shows up. Well, Mogget shows up first in his true form, and he's about to fight. And then Caragor shows up, and he's about to fight. Mogget's like, "No, I'm here first." They have the briefest moment of a fight, if you will. It's
somehow it's off screen in a book, which makes almost no sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And
I never thought about it like that, but totally. Oh my god.
So like he's out of the picture until like the very last moment. Sorry, I went AFK and the other thing for a minute. Okay. So they have the official Sabriel Caragor fight, and she dies. Well, she gets impaled, but she was managed to put the ring that was used earlier on Mogget on Caragor after seeing the remembrance that, hey, Mogget's in there, so maybe this will work the same way. And then they are both separated at the end.
Gotcha. That makes a lot more sense now. Because I heard all of that stuff. I understood what happened with the ring. I missed the part that, because I guess because it happened off screen, that's the part that confused the shit out of me.
They basically combined. And then
well, Caragor ate Mogget.
There's one line about him looking as if he had digested something.
Yeah.
Right.
And then she puts the ring on, and it splits them into two cats, a Mogget cat and a Caragor cat.
Okay, that makes way more sense because that one line is the hang up right there.
It's easy to miss, but if you have it.
Really makes you
If you're
think
going
like
at
what manga it was.
1.6 speed, it's funny how those words don't just miss you.
No, I
mixed and jumbled.
rewound everything I know I missed
Oh.
because
Yeah.
there was a couple
No.
times where it got really jumbled.
Yeah, no.
Because when he was reading as the magistrate lady from the school, and that
Sure.
when she was having a huge fit, I think she was the one that was having the fit. I think one of the teachers was having a fit.
Yeah,
Whichever
Usually
one
the
was.
the
Principal.
headmistress.
Yeah, the headmistress. Every time he was talking
Yeah.
as her, like he would read like a normal pace ish, like a slowish pace, which is why I had it faster too. Anyways, I could understand everything. But when he was speaking as her, he spoke really fucking fast. I couldn't understand anything he said. It's like holy shit.
Well, because he's like in a huff.
I mean,
Right,
I get it. It's a
rewind it.
performance thing, but it made it so it
Slow
was.
down for.
right.
I had to rewind it and then slow it down to
yeah.
1.6 speed so I could understand what the fuck he said.
So,
But
So that's a
um,
weird audiobook performance.
it is,
the-
yeah.
Yeah.
The only other thing I wanted to mention, and before we transition into the things that maybe we didn't like so much about this book, was that the other thing besides the cool necromantic stuff was that I thought that the way that Garth Nix conveyed the tone and the tension, there felt, and sometimes he did some things that sort of artificially loosened the tension when I think he could have kept the pedal to the metal a little bit more, and I'm not sure. I didn't write it, so it's not
Fair
up to
enough.
me to make those decisions. But the way that he describes sort of like the eerie looming presence of evil and Sabriel's sense of being able to feel the dead and death around her, and kind of those sort of descriptions and the feelings of sickness coming from the corrupted magic charter
Yeah.
stones.
The scene where they're down like in the reservoir
Yeah.
underneath the castle does this really well.
And the descriptions of Karagor's voice and all of these little like
And
details.
there's these, this like army of zombies that are like
Yeah.
chanting and
Yeah.
banging on drums and stuff.
that,
It's
was
really
described
quite
as
haunting.
like a gurgling, like 1,000 sailors drowning at once, and it's like, oh, that's cool. That's great imagery. Like
it's good imagery.
there were so that was the other thing I think that was not entirely but generally very successful with this book as well. Those were the two big things for me
Mm-hmm.
that made it an experience that I enjoyed. I'm not sure if anybody else had anything else before we
Well, so like I don't want to.
we're not
I
gonna
feel like-
bash. We're not gonna bash. I just want to make
No,
I
like,
think
I
all of
don't
us
want it to-
generally agree that it was good.
Yeah, like I don't want it to feel like we're building up to the things we hated about this book, because I really didn't. Like overall, this is a really good book. I really enjoy both times I've read it, and it's just like a couple little hang-ups I have, a few, and I'm sure it's the same, like little tiny things. I'm like, I would have done that different, or that kind of took me out of it. There's nothing major for me that really tears this book apart. Overall,
It's like our Loki conversation.
exactly.
And our Marvel
Well,
conversation in general is that
okay.
Marvel
And for
movies
me,
can't,
it's
aren't really bad.
Yeah,
There's
it's
just
really
little bits that are
good.
like,
There's a couple things I disagree with. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's a very good book. But let's talk about
Okay.
some negatives.
Well, on that note, I have some issues.
Okay.
Number one, first and foremost, I don't like a single character. Okay, I think that
Wow,
the characters
okay.
are poorly written.
Okay.
The best character, hands down, Sabriel.
Mogget.
Super cool.
Mhm.
Nope, not Mogget. Mogget is not cool. We'll get there in a moment, though. But
Thought Mogget was
Sabriel is
cool.
cool because we're introduced to her. She seems like this really cool, smart, intelligent,
She's confident.
confident, ego-driven, young sorceress, and she's gonna go on this cool adventure. And I'm like super fucking down. She has this, like, the first time you meet her, she's leaving maybe in like the second scene with her, basically she's left the school and she's getting this fun kind of playful interaction with the captain of the guard before she crosses into the Old Kingdom, and you get a lot of character from her, and she seems really cool. And then the minute she steps foot in the Old Kingdom, she becomes as boring as anything in the world, because all of a sudden she loses any agency. For the rest of the book, until the very, very end, she makes no choices. All she does is continually ask people for help. And it's so annoying because she seems like such an interesting person, and then you toss her into an environment where she doesn't know anything, and then all she does is complain about how she's not getting answers fast enough.
And
So
not
she
only,
has to So she has to first. She has to literally basically ask for a wish. She asks for a wish. She's like, "Where do I go first?" And she gets an answer. She goes to that place. She finds Mogget. Mogget tells her what to do next. Doesn't give her options. Just says, "Do this next." She does that thing. She finds Touchstone. Touchstone says, "Okay, now we have to do this," and that carries us through to the end of the book. She doesn't really get to do much, and it's so disappointing because she was the most interesting person.
Now, not only does she not have answers, the characters specifically are restricted from giving her answers.
That's just bad writing. That was unacceptably bad writing, which we'll get into in a moment, but the fact that there's a magic spell that the characters who know things that are important to the plot can't say because there's magic.
I agree.
That is stupid, especially when you artificially pull those rules back when you put people on a boat. You put people on a boat for no reason. You have a page where you say they sat here for 6 days. On the 6th day, they realize the magic is gone, but not before the magic runs out, so they can't give you all the information they need. Bad writing. That's unacceptably bad writing.
Agreed.
Sabrina.
So, I mean, maybe this is a little bit more devil's advocate for some of the scenes that you're talking about. And I'm not trying to excuse them because it does, when you put it that way, I can definitely see it. But there were kind of reasons for them, and I kind of mostly forgot most of what I was going to say, to be perfectly honest. I think most of it's just kind of to highlight the fact that she is a lost, like, it's being lost in something that she wishes she knew more about, and so it's kind of like the missed opportunity. And that was the point, is to show that she is doing growth, but at the same time she's not being super active in that growth. Because she does following instead of deciding.
She does kind of lament that, like, oh man, I could have been raised over here and I would know better. So there is that element. And go ahead, Johnny.
She was dropped in an environment that she literally had no knowledge of.
Yeah, but she keeps saying, go ahead.
The new kingdom had zero idea as to what the fuck was in the old kingdom.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to a certain extent, yes, I totally agree, but at the same time, I think that she did have some sort of agency, like in a sense of like how to deal with those situations. So like maybe not place in the situations, but she knew how to get out of it.
And that's my thing. I don't feel like she really ever got out of anything without somebody telling her what to do, except for very early on, which I found disappointing. But I can understand how we could have different opinions on that.
Yeah,
I feel like a big part of the reason why too is just because if you have a character that knows everything, doing those lore dumps is harder to do as a writer. But that's one of the things I don't like. I didn't like all the lore dumps because, like I said, it was going in one ear out the other. Like, I was having to go back reading Spark Notes because, like I said, I listened to the first half of the book at normal speed, so that wasn't necessarily the issue as much as just like there was so much stuff going on. Like another thing I was talking to Sabrina about earlier, that she was arguing with me one way or the other, which I can understand a little bit of her point, but what we were arguing about was the Mordecants in the book, because he has named in his world building, which is great if you want to add a whole bunch of specific things to your world. Like he has charter magic, the free magic. That gets just way more confusing than just saying good magic versus evil magic, and way more confusing. Like a Mordecant is essentially just a golem, essentially.
Flesh golem.
There's a little bit more to it, which is what Sabrina was saying. There's a little bit more to it, which
I would agree.
But at the end of the day, it's mostly a golem though, because it's a conglomeration of like different undead things, and it's being controlled by somebody.
But what's wrong calling it a different name?
It's just, I don't know.
He's trying to make it different. He's not going to just rehash a bunch of things like, oh yeah, here's an orc, here's a goblin.
Well, I'm not asking for that. I'm just saying, like, as a person who's getting into the story, I can understand, like, as you read it more often, it becomes more clear and stuff like that. But as somebody who's delving into it for the first time, it gets very intense with the lore. And convoluted, that's a very good word. Like, it makes it way more confusing than it needs to be. Which is fine.
Yeah, because
it's fine.
It's like a lore dump, and he acts like you're supposed to know it.
Which is fine. It's a world building thing. He's trying to build his world, which he clearly does over the 6 books.
Right.
But
Zach.
I did want to say real quick that, like, on your point about Sabriel's agency and the sort of charter magic spell that makes it so she can't get any answers, it didn't bother me. I didn't really notice it, but now that you bring it up, I totally agree, and it'll probably bother me next time I read it. So I just is valid, but it didn't bother me the first time.
Same.
To Ryan's point, for whatever reason, I always imagined Mordicants as like big fiery dogs.
Demons.
Yeah,
I don't
demon
think-
dogs. Demon
Yeah.
dripping,
Like, I don't know-
fire dogs.
I
Yeah.
don't know if that's
That's what I was
actually
gonna
what
say.
it, okay.
Well, he
So you
mentioned
guys
No,
got there
I
too.
imagined
I
it
like
there.
I don't know if they were supposed to be like human size or dog size or whatever, but for whatever reason, I always imagine them as dogs.
I thought of them as like a hybrid.
Yeah.
Not really like even
Yeah.
dogs. I
I
don't
was-
like a
remember
lanky
where that was.
dog with like
Yeah, that's what
I just
saw.
imagined, lanky arms, like razor sharp claws, and like I imagine like
Yeah.
horns on
I
this
don't know
thing,
if there's
and
any
then, like,
dog
maybe a
imagery in the
snout kind of
book,
thing.
but it
Yeah.
feels
well,
like
there
should
is
be.
kind of dog imagery in the reservoir because he said, like, did my hound scare you?
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
the
Must
big
be
thing
it.
is, like, even for all the dead, is like, well, a lot of the times they will come as humanoid, being that's what corpses are.
Mhm.
They're constantly changing. They're all in different sizes. Some of them will have multiple limbs, 2 long limbs. Their faces will be completely wrong because they're just a mishmash of things. But I think that's the idea is like their forms are always changing. So like
Yeah.
specifically more of the ones that are more of a spiritual-ish form or
Sure.
spirit-like form than just like rotten flesh. You have
Yeah,
more of the
like there's
chance
that
like
skin jumper in that
yeah.
like
Oh,
island.
that one was cool.
That was
I
really
like that.
cool. Yeah.
I think that it was super like quick on how they
it was
did
like
it.
a pocket episode, a
Yeah,
bottle
like a
episode
filler
of the
Exactly.
book, and that's
yeah,
fine.
it was like a filler episode. It was a cool idea, but it was
it
just
was-
like,
yeah.
it's done. Okay,
I feel
cool.
like he was just like, you know what, I have this cool zombie idea.
Yeah.
I gotta write it in here somewhere.
Yeah.
So whatever. But I was gonna say like, I don't want to get too hoity-toity, snooty on you, Ryan, but I feel like lore dumps and complicated words and stuff like that are pretty par for the course of a fantasy novel.
Well, sure.
I was
maybe-
gonna say the same thing. I think a lore dump is more of something that you try to stay away from in like a movie or TV, like a visual media.
Yeah.
But in books, it's kind of what I expect.
And so maybe like you and I, Daniel, are just more used to that kind of thing, and we can retain long ass vocabulary a little better.
It's how it's presented.
Sure.
I think. Like
could be.
I'm cool with lore dumps, and I think it's the same thing for visual media. It's
Yeah.
how it's presented. You don't have a character come in and be like, 20 years in the service and like comes to find something that should have been fucking known, and it's like, what is that? And somebody that just started is like, well, actually, this is a thing that blah 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 blah, and
Yeah.
start talking about it. It's like
Yeah,
you should know,
I
that's poor writing.
For
But-
sure. That's a contrivance. What I mean is just like
And
if like calling a golem a mordicant or having fancy names for monsters or like lands or factions or whatever is not very difficult for me to like retain and keep track of, but that might just be from having more experience of reading books. I don't know.
I don't know if that's exactly it because just there's a lot of it. That's the main thing is there's
The frequency.
a lot
It
of yeah
didn't-
exactly. But also here's a quote from the book. This is why I was
Okay,
I was
well,
going,
I want to say it didn't feel like any more than any other book to me.
That's fine.
So it's
But
pretty normal.
Here's the
say.
reason why I was going more along the lines of the golem was because this is the description in chapter 6
All right, hit me.
that is given. It says, a thing that could pass at will through life and death. Its body is made of clay and human blood, brought to life with a human spirit and full of free magic. That is dangerous magic not governed by the charter. That was like the description that it was given.
Yeah.
Play of
So,
clay
which is why I
human
was leaning
blood.
more towards
Interesting.
the golem
Yeah, so it's a
aspect
golem.
of it.
Yeah.
Like I get
So-
I get what you guys are saying, especially with the going from life and death, because that does sound more demon-y now that I'm thinking about it, and I like that idea of it more, of it being like a shadowy demon.
I swear
type
that
thing.
there was another description that
Well,
was
I'm
in
sure
there
there's
that,
more
like,
than one.
used like demon.
Because
I'm
it
pretty sure, 'cause
mentions
there's
the
no way that
eyes
we all
and the
just
mouth,
came to
you're
that.
seeing inner fire. And I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
might be what kind of
Ah,
skews
Pretty
it.
sure that's
'cause-
where we were at. And I
Yeah.
swear there's a dog imagery at some point.
No, there
but-
definitely is.
sure.
There
Yeah.
is, and Sabrina's
Okay.
right because
The hound.
They do
Yeah.
mention the hound thing later. So
So that's how we got
I
there.
think Sabrina's right. I think they just come in lots of different shapes and sizes.
Sabrina,
but-
what do you got?
I have to try to remember now because I went AFK again and I had
Lol.
to try to bring my brain back. I think it had to do with your argument with them being different names. There's two things that I had to. So I get it that yes, they are going to be similar to different things, but I feel like there's kind of the joy of having something be like, oh, it's slightly different because of different names. So you can be like, oh, this is just like this. And so you can make that fun connection. Like the more optimistic way of looking is like, oh, Mordecant, that sounds exactly like a flesh golem. How cool is that? Or like, at Porcelain, that's like a grave dooming cleric, which I always think about a lot.
100%. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
That I guess is kind of along the lines of like the lore dump, as well as kind of like introducing information that it sounds like you should already know of, and done in certain areas, and that's something I like. It's like I like learning a lot of information about the world building part. That excites me. So the lore dumps to me are like super fun, as long as they're placed in certain spots, which, you know, when you are having the whole bells in like a 2-page section, that can be a lot where you're like, okay, what does the first bell do again? When they're not actually being used. The other thing, because he does make mention to like some other monsters, like the Stilken, or like, I forgot what the other one is now, where there's basically name dropping without explanations. That can be frustrating, but at the second time, being that it's not a one book thing, then it's kind of like, well, what are those? And will we find out?
Yeah. Johnny.
One thing that I find parallel to something like you should already know kind of thing is Game of Thrones. In the very beginning of Game of Thrones, they throw faction names out like as if faction names, city names, King's Landing, you know, and they say like certain things like that, and you learn as you go, but
that's like what they're saying. They're not going like, what's a Winterfell? And then somebody looks and goes, "That's a Winterfell." Like,
no, I know. Yeah,
bad writing.
Exactly.
So they do it casually so that you pick up on it.
Right.
As you
well,
go,
and
like
also
you
there's little things like in a show like Game of Thrones, there's a moment where, or in the book,
like Game of
in a book like Game of Thrones, there's a moment where someone's like, someone mentions Winterfell, and in response, somebody says something like, "Oh, the Starks have held Winterfell for the last 1,000 years. They'll never do that." And that's how they can kind of sneak in that, you know, oh, the Starks have been in Winterfell for 1,000 years, and we know that, and it just kind of comes out naturally as part of some conversation. And I think that has to do with the difference. I think that's writing for me a trope of a young adult novel, right? And I could think of a lot of ones that I could name off the top of my head, but like you could talk about the Hunger Games or anything like that. Books. There are those all these kind of books, especially ones that have shorter page counts. Those are compromises that have to be made, sacrifices that have to be made. Yeah. That's kind of how things are introduced. So I don't short the book for the way it introduces some of those things, because again, that is pretty much what I expect from this kind of a thing. Yeah. I think that mostly what I find disappointing is how consistently simple a lot of those explanations, or the methods through which those explanations come about, are. Yeah.
So that's kind of what the biggest thing is that when I was reading through it, I don't, like, now that I've read through the whole thing, I don't fully understand what everything was about, because I don't think that it was described the best way or in the best mode. Like the charter symbols, like for the life of me, like I don't know. Obviously, like this is something that would come up in the later series, you know, charter magic and where that came from, the roots of this and what the difference between that and free magic is. And it's just
generic magic, right? Right, and that's the thing. Like it didn't really have its own identity, which is why there's not much that you would need to know about it, because it's pretty much introduced as this world has magic, and it's the same as any magic you could find in any fantasy thing. You know the words to the spell, and you know the shape of the rune. There was,
you know, charter magic versus free magic. Free magic sounds like that chaotic magic that nobody can tame, but then charter magic is the magic that people can tame, and that's the difference between, you know, regular magic. Like in D&D, you have magic that people can tame, but it's not magic that, well, I mean. And then you have like wild magic people like that like whatever, but I'm not talking about that specifically. Like arcane magic, you can learn how to use it, but they don't have like free magic type of thing, I would say. They didn't really go into depth on that. And then the charter stones, and then
well, yeah, and I mean that's my point, is you're just kind of supposed to roll with it. It's
right.
not. It's.
I'm not saying that's.
They don't.
I'm just saying that
as,
my experience, I didn't understand it after the book. That's
and
all.
what I mean is that you're not. It's not meant to be understood. It's just like there are magic stones. That's it. They don't need to have any significance for you beyond the fact that they are magic stones and they are important. That's it. That's all you need to know. That's what the book tells you is all you need to know. With the charter magic, it's magic that some people in this world can do. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know how it came about, where it came from. That's something we can explore in another book down the line. But for this book, not important. You just have to kind of... So it's that those answers aren't there, and they're not supposed to be there because it's not something that's important to this story that the author's telling. Which, again, I agree with you. I would want more of those explanations.
Yeah.
And
I would say that I
because
disagree.
he doesn't need those explanations, I think that depth is not there. I don't really think there probably is much more depth to those things, because I think that's just kind of you're supposed to just kind of take it as it lies, you know.
I disagree.
Sabrina.
I think that that's just poor writing. If you're going to have some big thing and you're not going to explain it, there should be a reason why you don't. There might be more, and I'm sure that's probably what Sabrina's going to come up with. It's that they probably delve deeper into that, but just to open up a story like that and then just like kind of give like a half-ass kind of description as to what it is, it just kind of left me with like I don't know what this is. Sorry, go ahead, Sabrina.
I was actually going to kind of agree with both of you were talking about, because yes, it's cool to set up like these mystery components, especially if they are going to be bigger later down the line, because it's going to make you want to read the rest of the series. But at the same time, it's like you can't leave these huge cliffhangers or these big mystery points if it's going to kind of interact with you getting to the end of the book and going like, well, I'm not really that interested in reading the rest of it, but I'm kind of annoyed that I don't know X thing. So it's like you have to make the first book very interesting, but also standalone in such a way. So yeah, there's some components where it's like, oh, this is a cool mystery that'll be brought up later. But it's also whether or not it was actually set up to sound like a mystery or just like this is a thing people know. You might learn about it later. You don't know.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like I said, it's just one of those things that you're just supposed to, it exists. And maybe that's as far as it's going to go. And that's just kind of, I think that's just part of young adult literature because they have certain parts of the story they want to focus on. There are some parts which are just kind of perfunctory and because they have their page count, they have to hit this certain amount. They're not going to spend a bunch of time on some of these other things that maybe you want. But again, at the end of the day, the author included whatever he figured was important. And if it's not there, then it must not be important, which again, I would say is disappointing because I think magic is cool. So I would want more magic, which is why I like the necromancy.
One thing I feel like I need to clarify for myself specifically about the lore dump stuff is I don't hate the lore dump stuff at all.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I think the main thing was I just wish it was more digestible. It was the only thing.
Yeah,
because
it's how it's presented.
Because I think I could have kept with me all these things. Like he mentioned, the different bells. Of course, that's the way it just was rapid fire. I mean, sure, he did a good job later on redescribing things, but at the same time, though, like it just wasn't digestible enough to keep in mind the whole time. Because I was similar with Johnny, where like towards the end there was a lot of things that were still confusing, which is fine. It wasn't quite the same thing necessarily. Like I didn't even necessarily care to know necessarily more or less about the stones. That was one of the things that was confusing, was some of the magic.
I think that's going to change. Everybody's got a different level of being able to retain that stuff. It changes person to person.
Well, I didn't feel this way at the end of the stand at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like I understood the stand 100%.
Well, the stand's kind of grounded in reality,
and it's got more space, and it's way more. It's
a standalone
and for example, I think that a great piece that you can use to compare these two things is we don't really get the background of the Charter Stones because the author seemingly determined that that's not something we needed to focus on in this story. We never find out where the Man in Black comes from. That's just one of those things. We just have to take.
Yeah.
And this was an issue,
but
right?
That's fine.
This was a thing that we
okay
disagreed about because I was like, oh, I don't mind the fact that the world that is presented is a world where there can be a guy who's basically
that's not the argument though. The argument is that how the information was presented was confusing.
Yeah.
And the information itself, cool.
Yeah.
How it was presented, I didn't understand.
Okay.
At least at face value, when I first read it, I didn't understand it. And that's the issue.
Okay.
I think that there should have been more clarity. And I think that the information that he did present about the Charterstone, because there was, he should have made it more clear.
Gotcha.
That's what I'm saying. Because, like, yes, I agree. There is mystery behind the Charterstones, and that is fine. I'm totally okay with that. That's something that you can delve into deeper. And that's basically what Sabrina was saying earlier, is that this is something that he presented and is like, hey, look at this. Yeah, this is cool, right? But, like, at the same time, he's like, hey, look at this. Like, he's like covering it up while showing you. And it's like, what am I looking at? He's like, yeah. It's like pointing at something on your face and being like, can you see that? But like your finger is covering up what you're trying to show them. And you're like, I can't see it. So I don't, there's no mystery behind it because I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at.
I think
that's the issue.
I think 100%. That's exactly what I was trying to say, because it's not about retaining the information. It's because it wasn't clear to begin with. I think that was the issue I think we were trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to,
I think that says a lot of things about like the fact that I don't remember a lot of pieces about this story. Which maybe
it's just
still good
that I read it twice. I just didn't have any of these issues. Maybe it's that I've read a bunch of fantasy books and I can, try to put the pieces together. I don't know what it is. I didn't have any of this problem.
I didn't have that issue with it, but I understand where you're coming from.
I understand where you're coming from. I think it's valid what you're saying, and I respect that opinion. I think you're correct for you. But for me, it wasn't a problem, is all I'm trying to say.
Sabrina.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah.
I was just remembering back, because I think, having read it several times and stuff does change the way that you either remember stuff. But I do remember being absolutely angry at the ending, which I don't like the end of this book. I really don't. Okay. And I would love to
Let's get into
talk more about that. Let's hear it.
I was actually, I'm glad you brought this up, because this is what I thought would be our last kind of topic. So take it away, please.
Well, I still had some more stuff, because I remember being angry, getting to the third book in the series and then forgetting how upset I was, because there was a big span of time that there's like 3 years between me getting to the rest of the series, because I didn't know and I forgot. But like getting to the third book and then having answers for certain things that I forgot I was angry about to begin with that I didn't know about. And so it's like, I was angry because I forgot I was angry, but then angry again that it took that long for me to get the answers. So that kind of goes back to that.
But you did get the answers, so that's good.
To some of them. Because I think the other part, whether it's considered good writing or not, he mentions somewhere in one of the novellas, I think, or something, that his writing style was kind of, he obviously didn't intend for the story to go super long, being that it was supposed to be just a trilogy, and maybe it was just supposed to be one book before that, that he mentioned that as far as the lore or some of the things happened, like he knew certain things, but then it was also like, then they just kind of, they would grow as he was writing. So there wasn't this big whole like billboard plan we'd like go like, this is going to happen and this is why this is here. So there's probably a lot of that has to do with down the line he decided, ooh, this would be really cool because I didn't actually, fill this in earlier. So
I got that feeling from it.
Yeah.
I got that feeling from the first read.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So the ending.
I think the ending. So I think that for me, I kind of liked the ending. And I think that the reason I like the ending has to do with what I thought was kind of the overarching theme of the book, which I think that the main theme of the book obviously has to do with loss and death and a little bit of grief mixed in, right?
Yeah.
Because I also think that the story, if you really want to like zoom way out and kind of extrapolate sort of what the arc of this book could kind of be an allegory for, is losing a loved one. A parent is a very direct example from this book, but where, you're young, you're not necessarily ready or prepared to enter, the world, be an adult, as an adult. And at this kind of moment, you lose a significant person in your life and you're immediately thrust into this unfamiliar landscape that nobody can really demonstrate to you. Nobody can really explain it. It's just you kind of learn by experiencing it and trying to figure out what the right steps are along the way. And maybe you happen to find somebody who can help you through, but that may or may not be, how it. And so I liked the journey that she went through and coming to terms with the death of her father over the course of this journey. I thought that was very moving. And when there really wasn't a final fight, because Karagor never really actually did anything, and he probably only was in like maybe 10 pages of the book, I could forgive that because of the significance it placed instead. You get twice as many pages of Sabriel and with her father in the gates, coming to terms with the fact that he is not going to return with her to the land of the living, than you get with her fighting Karagor, and that seems very intentional to me.
I agree. I think it was well done. I rather enjoyed it. Didn't have any big problems. Yeah, you pretty much summed it up for me.
Sabrina.
Johnny, did you have something to say? Or
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. See, with that idea in mind, that, you know, this is about accepting loss and death, and being that that's the whole thing of being in a person, is that, hey, everything has to die. And then the ending, the epilogue, I mean, her being told that, hey, you don't have to die, you have to go back, is kind of like that. I get what you're saying, because that's the last of the line, and you obviously need more of that specific line to keep balance or whatever. But to have the emphasis on being like, you're in charge of making sure everything dies because you can't go against that, and then going against that seemed
herself
wrong and frustrating. Obviously, that wasn't her choice, kind of. It was all of their choices. But to me, it was just like, you can't have that theme
kind of invalidating
this entire time and
happened.
then just go against it like, well, here's you can break the rules, it's okay.
Right.
Everybody gets one.
Color or you don't. I'll be mad either way.
I don't disagree, but to add on to the theme, I think that coming of age is a big theme as well.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the biggest themes, and then like the undertone of the grief and in dealing with a lost loved one and stuff like that. I think the ending was fine. I didn't really have any like bad notes about the ending. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought that like the fact that Karagor was literally just taking out every single city just to get to her, or well, just to get to the sarcophagus, I guess, was super cool. I thought that was an awesome idea, and I think that it made such great tension when
it is
he
a rather exciting
arrive.
sequence when they're like trying to rush to the school and get there as fast as they can. They got to outrun this like fog happening. I did enjoy that quite a lot.
I like the idea of like the like terrible magic that was in there, just like making people actually sick to their stomach. I thought that was super cool. And then finally, like him being like on their heels the entire time, and they're like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Right here. Okay, we got to get this done now." And then, you know, the tension of the very end of the book is perfect. I think
I would agree.
The last fight, maybe it wasn't as cool as it could have been. There could have been like some magic stuff, but that's my understanding of high fantasy, is like magic battles and stuff like that. But it doesn't seem to be the same way as what charter magic is. It seems to be more of a incantation magic, where like you have to say specific things in order to do things, and instead of like casting a spell that was just on the tip of your tongue and stuff like that. So anyways,
unless you're touchstone and he can pull out random shit whenever.
Right. Yeah.
And fire goddamn fireballs from his fingers or block arrows.
Yeah.
So
I think the ending was really good. I thought that the tension was really great. I think that the very final ending with, you know, the Abhorsons and how they, you know, led her through that grief and like said, you got to do this. And then the coming of age finally coming circle, and she is now the Abhorson, and seeing how she doesn't want to be called it throughout the entire book. And then finally she comes to her dad, and then he's like, I'm dead. Like, sorry, not sorry. And then she's like, I guess I am the Abhorson. And then finally taking that name as they prepare themselves for Karagor. I think that was really cool.
Sabrina.
Agreeing with that and trying to remember the several things. I wish I could hold a train of thought a little bit longer. Dang. The one thing I liked throughout the book, and especially towards the end, is, you know, there was a lot of deaths, because like General Horse, he died, but you kind of like, he was a friendly character, and so it's like you didn't really want him to, but they went ahead and did it. So they weren't afraid of killing semi-important people.
Yeah, same with the Magistrix as well.
Yeah, Magistrix,
got murked.
the friend,
that
there was a lot of
me.
innocent deaths. But
it was ballsy.
So that's nice where it keeps it kind of dark. It doesn't keep it like, oh, everyone who was nice and important still alive, but there was still the grimness to it. And I absolutely love the free magic and everything about that. Just how it's talked about differently, the whole thing, like the nauseating, the acid taste,
super cool.
Even when we were talking about it, like the difference between using it because she had to use it to get through the gates and death, and just how it physically feels to do it versus doing the charter magic. And there was another thought, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, the other thing I really liked, because two of my favorite scenes were the one with Mogget in the hole and how that was dealt with, because then you're like, oh, it's a fluffy cat, but just kidding, it's this. And the fact that they brought that back at the end and how it was bound the same way.
It's really good
different.
Payoff for
I
a
liked
setup.
those two, because the Mogget scene was one of my favorites, and I liked that they did it again for the same thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I thought it was so lame that they had introduced a ring and then used it immediately after, and I was like, really? You're just gonna there's no suspense whatsoever, and then it ends up happening in the end. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Never mind. That was actually really good.
So something about the ending. I mean, I understand the whole idea of the theme of it being the way it is. I agree with Sabrina. I think it's kind of a cheating way out to have her survive at the end when she should just commit, just let her die, because that's what happened. That's the whole point, is that they're not when it's your time. When they're trying to argue, they're like, well, it's not your time. That's stupid. But
yeah,
and I understand the whole point, as Daniel was saying, with the theme of the book being the idea of grieving and the aftermath of loss and stuff like that. Sure, I still would have liked the ending where she rescued her dad. I would have liked that more, I think. And then
that would have been good too.
I think
I'll
that would
take
have
the
been
theme though.
more enjoyable for me. But
sure,
it doesn't have to be a super happy ending. Still, a lot of people died, but I would have liked that, or at least had him there, and then he maybe helped in the sacrifice of stopping him once and for all, which they didn't even really stop him once and for all.
Goku and Gohan in the Cell tournament.
And I mean, I think that speaks to the story that Garth Nix wanted to tell, because I think that thematically he had to die. For what I think the book was about, I think that there was no way out of it but for him to die. With everything else that, the message that we were kind of moving forward with. But I understand, yeah, that makes sense to me why.
The theme definitely would have changed.
He was set up as such a badass. I would have loved for him to have survived and then done some cool shit.
Which is fine. I mean,
yeah.
Like you said, it's not the story he wanted to tell, and that's absolutely fine. It's just not the story that I would have enjoyed as much. But
why was he able to come out of? I mean, oh wait, no, that's right. He went through the final
Magic.
gate of his own volition.
Yeah,
he stayed.
He was
at
the
come in
fifth,
and grab him.
Which that's another thing that's kind of dumb. Is why I mean, they didn't really delve into it that much. Why he got trapped there to begin with, which is fine. But it's one of those things, and I know one of the books is based on him specifically.
I think there's actually a throwaway line where he says I got trapped here by such and such.
Well, I know.
They say a couple
that.
of times that they think it's a trap, and Karagor's doing it on purpose, and he probably was. Yeah. Because he's trying to lure Sabriel there so he could have her blood, so he can yada yada yada.
Right. I know. I understand that they did say all of that stuff, but at the same time, is he really dead then? He just was trapped. He's not dead. So him coming back shouldn't matter because he didn't actually die.
And they mention that also because it's if your soul's apart from your body for too long, your body can't survive.
Oh, yeah. That all that says to me is a lot of excuses. Is what that sounds to me, which is fine.
Look, and when you're making up the rules for your own world, it's gonna sound like an excuse. But it's just kind of how it, you just got to be yeah, okay, that's how this world works, I suppose.
Which is fine. Yeah. Like I said, it's not a huge deal. It's just, like I said, it's not what I would have enjoyed more.
I had an argument, but it's not worth making, so whatever. What's up, Sabrina?
Oh, you can make it.
No, it's. I don't think I have all the facts. It's fine. I'll let it go.
You can have an argument without facts.
Well, now now you have to say something.
Well, they're he gets his body's in the well or the hole or whatever, right? And his soul's trapped beyond death.
Yes.
And they have that whole bit where he's I'll only have 60 heartbeats or whatever
100
the hell it is.
100.
Right. 100 heartbeats in life. So I don't remember what the justification for that was, but
magic.
I do remember that he gets into life successfully and then chooses to use the last bell to kill himself and everything in the army of zombies. So it was like, I read it as like that wasn't so much what killed him, is that he was just trapped back there and then he chose to die because that was the only way out of the situation.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, okay. I think you're right. I think I remember that is what happened because they were running away because he told them to run.
Yeah, he knew his time was limited, so he used it as a sacrifice to gain an advantage.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Sure.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I didn't really remember that as
like
well
I said,
as
reading it a couple times and throwaway lines justify shit. It is what it is. Was that all you were gonna say, Sabrina?
No, crap.
How'd you like the ending?
I mean, I didn't like the very. Oh, that's what it was. So, like, just a better way to, I feel, to have done the epilogue specifically. The epilogue is what kind of makes me mad. Is the fact that, you know, they pulled her up and said, you need to go back, instead of, like, maybe she was sitting there, they're doing healing spells on her, and she realizes she's floating down, maybe to realize herself, like, hey, I can't do this, and she has to get up, she has to fight the will of the river, which she's been having to do this whole time, and every person has to do every time they go into death. It would have been so cool for her to get up and be like,
way better.
I can't go. It, like, maybe I should be dead, but there's a reason I need to be alive, and that's to continue this because there's not going to be anything. That would have been so much stronger than having a whole bunch of Avatar people pull her up and be like, yeah.
Yeah, having the previous portions be, like, just beyond that gate and just, like, watching.
Which, it goes on,
just, like,
it goes back to what Daniel was saying, is that she didn't have agency in that either.
Yeah,
like,
no, that's what I was thinking too.
Good point.
To finally get that agency and become the person.
Yeah.
Zach, any final thoughts here?
Well, so that's a really nice dovetail into the end of the episode, but I do want to voice a couple gripes real quick. Just get some stuff out, because I don't know when we're going to talk about this again. I like Touchstone in general. I think he's a good, like, I think he has an interest, maybe not a character, but I think he has an interesting arc, story, whatever. The whole, like, getting, like, he's from the past, brought forward type thing. I think that's cool. This bothered me more the first time I read it, and then I kind of got over it by rereading it for this podcast, but, like, they kiss at the end, and I'm like, I don't know if I buy that, you know? I'm like,
nah.
Did we need that?
It's definitely typical.
I get it's YA, and there has to be romance, but I'm like, I don't know if I totally buy.
Why did Peeta and Katniss fall in love? I don't know.
Who knows? And that bothered me too. But it's like, you've only been, and I get, like, it's a stressful day, and there are a few, like, scenes where they'll, like, look at each other and be like, oh, whoa, you know, and so, like, he kind of sets it up, but more so the first time I read it, I was like, I don't buy this romance. And I don't think it needed to be
She was
here.
impressed by his penis. She knows what his penis looks like. Garth Nix makes sure that we know
exactly
that.
What it was.
She's 18.
Garth Nix makes sure that we know that she knows exactly what kind of penis
she was in an all-girl school. I get it. I didn't buy the romance. Whatever, it's fine.
That was one of the gripes that I had with Shadow and Bone, but that's another story.
True. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
I agree. But yeah, second, even smaller gripe, and I don't even know if it's my place to gripe about this, but I definitely noticed it. I'm not like any sort of grammar expert or anything, but he uses this one sentence structure a lot where he'll say like X happens, comma, till X happens. Like he uses the word till a lot. And I feel like he should use until or not use that.
Do you happen to have an example with you?
I don't have the book right next to me.
You can't just say something like this and like no example.
Seconds. I bet I'll find one.
Yeah, if it happens a lot, it's probably
while you look for that, I guess we'll just conclude with some final thoughts. I mean, I think we all thought that we enjoyed our time with this book. I don't think it's top of.
It's a small little thing, but once I noticed it, it really put me off. Let me just flip to any page.
I mean, I gotta say, this was my top book that I've ever read of all time.
That's true. Well, so, hey, yeah, you know,
I'm glad for you, Johnny.
And out of Johnny, the two,
I am more than happy to say that this next book we're gonna read, oh man, You get ready, Johnny, because
I'm like 40 pages in. It is pretty good so far.
Dune's gonna knock my socks off.
We're gonna do Dune. For all of you listening, if you've made it this far along in the podcast, thank you very much for listening. I really 10. Do. I don't. I love books. I'm glad that I can share some books with our friends.
I'm really excited about this.
Our next selection, as we've kind of referenced here, is going to be Dune. We're going to try and have that completed by the time that the film comes out this November. Dune, of course, by Frank Herbert, one of the seminal classic pieces of modern science fiction. It's been made into various movies and TV shows starring various famous people by various famous directors. So we'll see.
Maybe we should have the thing after Dune is released, because then we can compare both of them.
Well, look, we'll talk about this. We'll see. Yeah, once we read it. That's something we'll figure out. We have plenty of time between now and November. But if you guys were annoyed by very important things that aren't explained as to why they exist, I cannot wait to have you read Dune, because your brain is going to explode with how many things they just reference and they will never explain. You're just gonna have to fucking figure out what the fuck they're talking about.
Again, it's how it's presented.
I'm 40 pages into this book already. I'm enjoying it quite a lot, but he's absolutely right. This thing's gonna knock you on your ass.
It's a whole other level. This is. You're just wait and see. You just wait and see.
I'm excited.
It's a great book though. Is this your first time reading it, Zach?
Yeah, I haven't read it before. I've never seen the movie or anything. It's my first time.
Incredible.
I know
glad.
certain things about it. I know quotes, but it's my first time reading it.
Dune, Arrakis, Desert Planet. It's going to be great. We're going to have a really good time. I can't wait to see what you guys think about it.
Zach, please tell me you have an example.
I'm really trying here. I'm so sorry that I didn't come up with a fucking example. I'll take better notes for Dune, okay? If I really need to point out something like
page
this.
Page 75, line 3.
Yeah. Dune probably is what we're going to be doing next. If you out there, any of our faithful listeners, have any suggestions of books that you've read or that you want us to read, I'm absolutely willing to take any suggestions. I'll even go so far as to say that the next suggestion that we get, I can guarantee you right now, I don't care what it is, we'll just do it.
I have 5 other suggestions.
I'll commit to reading it. I guess I can't promise everyone else, but I promise you that if someone recommends a book, I will immediately purchase it and read it. It doesn't matter what it is. So,
because
send us an email.
We're gonna be
asktalkingxp@gmail.com.
And say, hey Daniel, try this one on for size, and I will complete it. I don't care if you're gonna give me War and Peace. I'll fucking do it.
I do want to get to that eventually. I have a laundry list of fantasy books that I very much enjoy, and I'm excited to share with you guys and hear your opinions on.
I have none. I bring nothing to this.
That's okay, because you're here to just
books.
After Dune, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this. I'm really hoping that this is gonna inspire you to maybe pick some books for us. Maybe if you find some things out there that make you curious.
I guarantee that is not going to happen.
I mean, the main one
don't think
that
that's
if
true.
I was to come back and do it again would be having you guys read the NPCs, Swords, Spells, and
Sure.
That series is a lot of fun.
It's called Spells, Swords, and Stealth is what it's called.
I haven't read it.
There's a world. That's the beautiful thing about this. We have so many different things we could read, and I can't wait to bring it to you, Zach. How close are we, bud? Are we?
I don't think it's gonna happen.
You know what? It is what it is.
You know what? I believe you. And you're right. It is annoying.
Because I do have Sabriel on Amazon as like a Kindle thing, and so I'm currently letting it search its thing for Till, and it's having no look at the moment. Well, I
swear to God, it's just a weird little writing quirk that I noticed, and it got kind of annoying.
That's the thing. I didn't really notice anything like that, and grammar-wise or anything like that. I didn't really.
And then I read like 2 in a row, and I was like, wait a second. I'm so sorry. I will take better notes in the future. The mark flared, but Mogget didn't flinch till it grew dull again. Like, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
That was so anticlimactic.
I'm sorry.
It's that.
And I'm glad. I'm sorry that annoyed you. I don't get it, clearly.
It's just a weird structure, and I swear to God, he does it a lot. And once you notice one, you start noticing it happen over and over and over.
Maybe it's an Australian thing.
Maybe it's an Australian thing. I'm sorry. I'll take better notes.
It was also,
it was just a weird little gripe.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to make a big deal out of
Sabrina,
it. Sabrina,
thank you so much for this.
Thanks for coming on.
Yes, thank you. I've been wanting to talk about this book with people, and this is the first time I've done it.
Hey, here we are.
Same.
And hopefully,
Thanks everybody else for listening.
But thank you for listening, guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.